Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual neurolinguistic programming and cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues of both court-appointed and private, marriage counseling using the EFT method, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one session in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoachdanamslag.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our 10th and last episode of season 15, a very special guest and cancer survivor, Edward Miskie. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Ed, the floor is yours.
Well, hello, and thank you for having me. I'm Edward Miskie. I am an author, an actor, writer, producer, all the things. I work in the marketing, PR, and sales space. And this year is my 10-year cancer-free anniversary. And thank you, we are celebrating with the publishing of my book, of course, Cancer, Musical Theater, and Other Chronic Illnesses, available anywhere online where you buy books. And I just got approved to be on the shelves of the Drama Bookshop in New York City, which is a huge, it's co-owned by Lin-Manuel Miranda now. He kind of saved it from going under and out of business during the pandemic. And it's a place that I used to hang out as a teenager in New York. So it feels really good to be there in this full circle kind of moment. So that's kind of me and what's going on in a nutshell.
Thank you very much for being on the show, Ed. So first of all, what kind of cancer you were diagnosed with? And that happened 10 years ago. And how did you react to the diagnosis?
Sure. So I was originally diagnosed with rare and large B-cell Burkitt's, like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and there was some diffused something or other in there as well. You, as a doctor, would know better than I would. But it was super rare and aggressive. I had this huge tumor growing out from under my arm that was like stretching my skin out, and it was uncomfortable, and all kinds of things were happening. And I didn't get it checked, and I didn't get it checked, and I didn't get it checked. And then finally I was like, okay, well, we're starting to get stretch marks under my arm. And I was like, this is not good. So I was originally told it was an infection, and so I was given antibiotics and sent on my merry little way. But eventually I was out of town doing a show. As I said, I was an actor, and when I came back, I saw my doctor, and like a week later I was in chemo. It was very fast and very scary.
Well, what stage was it at that point?
1B. And later they kind of speculated if it was more stage 2, only because they didn't find out until, and this was part of the problem, was the hospital that I was at in the first place, and I moved, but they didn't tell me that they had actually found some evidence of living cancer on my spleen. It was under my arm, it was in my clavicle, and evidently on my spleen.
Okay.
So we had like 3 rounds of chemo, and 4 rounds of chemo that did not work, including intravenous, like spinal tap, shoot the drugs into your spinal cord situation. And then radiation, of course, like every day for 5 days for a month. And then I put my foot down. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. They wanted me to do a stem cell transplant that was where autologous, where someone else is your donor. And I basically said no, and I didn't want to do that. And I was 25. I had entered this situation in the best shape of my life, and there was no reason why it couldn't be my own donor. And they just were not be able to collect enough stem cells for that to be a reality.
Okay.
And I called BS on it, because it was like, there's no reason why like this should be a thing. And so when I switched hospitals, I finally put my foot down, advocated for myself, and went for a second opinion, which they told me not to do. I was told that the drugs that they had me on as a prophylaxis were screwing up my blood counts, and that's why I wasn't able to
Okay.
collect. So I just cut ties with that hospital and went somewhere else.
Oh, okay. So the treatment, how long did it take, Ed, to be able to go into remission? I mean, after with radiation, with chemo and all that, how long did you have to go through this treatment to be able to be cancer free?
So total, it was 10 months. And that wasn't active treatment at all times. Like I'd started the first week of December in 2011. And then I did what I just described, the 4 chemo rounds that did not work, and then radiation, which did work. That was over at the beginning of April in 2012. And then from that point forward, there was the tug of war between me and the hospital and switching to a different location. I ended up at Sloan Kettering. They were amazing. And I had to do more chemo there, and I did more stem cell collection there. And I finally did end up having a stem cell transplant where I was my own donor in July of
Okay.
that year. And so from July to October was like that period of time where it's like super touchy, and you have to be very careful about where you go and what you do and what you eat and all the things. And once that was over in October, then I was told 2 days before my birthday that I was cancer free.
Wow. Did they consider bone marrow transplant by any chance, or did they say
No,
that?
I don't know. I actually don't know why they didn't do a bone marrow transplant. I'm
We,
gonna guess that it's because it was a lymphoma
oh,
and not
okay.
something else. I think that's why. I'm not a doctor. I don't know, but I'm
Option in treatment, but I'm surprised that they didn't suggest that. But maybe in 2012, it was not as, I would say, popular at this point. So I'm not sure if the treatment for them is either chemo or radiation, and that doesn't work. They try other alternatives.
Yeah, well, I mean, stem cell transplants back then were like the thing to do. And so that I think might have had something to do with it. I did have 2 bone marrow biopsies, which were horrendous. They like drill into your
I know.
pelvis and like rip out bone marrow. You can feel everything. They numb you as best they can, but you can still feel it, and it's horrifying. Oh my God, like it's like having a sciatic nerve pinch like times 1,000. It's so bad. But they did do a bone marrow collection and biopsy to make sure everything was good there, but there was never a suggestion of a bone marrow transplant.
So after they said that you were cancer free after the 10 months, because I know that once they give you the radiation and they give you the chemotherapy, your immune system is completely shut down. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Why they don't want you to go out or be exposed to any viruses, because your body will not be able to fight anything. So did you take any alternative medicine that was like a naturopathy or whatever it is that was able to kind of help you with your immunity?
I wanted to, but it was kind of speculated that that was what got me into this mess in the first place. I was taking like this herbal like supplement that was pumpkin seed based, that was an immune booster.
Okay.
And that's kind of like one of the things that they were like, this could have caused this. And it was like, okay, well, I'm going to stop this immediately.
Because you know what, I think the medical community, Ed, they don't want to make you realize that whatever poison they put in your body is, that there's actually healthy alternative. Because if that was the case, everyone will use naturopathy and not go to the doctors, and then the whole bio pharma company will go shut down. That's
Oh,
one.
and absolutely, I fully agree with that to a degree. In my instance, that is not possible. Like there was no way that I could have been cured
Well,
naturally
no,
in
that, yeah,
any way.
that's on the
Um
level. Yes.
so I mean, and what is cancer? Cancer is like an aggravated collection of cells that like over multiplies. And so when you're taking an immuno booster, like a stimulant, like of course that's a thing that could potentially happen. And so we don't know for sure, we can't say for sure, but that was kind of one of the things that was on the table. But like I was very naturopathic up until that point, and I kind of got into this mess, and I asked them about it actually, and they were like, well, that's over right now.
Yes, yes.
And unfortunately, as much as I agree with you to a point with the medical industry and everything else, like it was still all of that saved my life, and it's why I'm here. So I think there's definitely a healthy blend of having those 2 things work in symbiosis, if you will. Uh, but we did look into the more naturopathic ways. There's a place down in Florida that we looked at, that we were going to go to, that was kind of like a water cleansing natural spa thing that like claimed to cure cancer, and then they made a documentary about it years later that it was killing people.
Okay.
So just glad I didn't go there.
Yeah. Very good.
We were very not naturopathic in this way.
Okay.
I actually, and to better answer your question, I did everything I could to kind of not live, basically. Not that I was like mentally unstable or, relatively, or suicidal or anything like that. And if you are, please like go seek help. But I was so self-sabotaging, and like, I drank my way through chemo, and I talk very openly about that because it was a thing that was like, I want to feel like a normal person. And most of the conversation, and the reason why I wrote my book in the first place, is because there wasn't any resources for that feeling of like you're having an existential identity crisis. And so like anything that you can do to feel normal, to feel like you're part of society, to feel like the way that you did before you started this whole mess in the first place, was the driving force behind me writing this book, because I did so many dangerous things that I should absolutely not have been doing because my immune system was gone. That, and I was doing it not because I wanted to die, but because I just wanted to feel like normal at some point.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Now, once you realized that everything was fine and you were cured, etc., did you continue on with those habits, or did you feel that now you should be grateful that God gave you another chance in life and you decide to change completely your behavior?
No, I mean, I kept going because the thing is, the truth of surviving cancer is that the survival part is harder. You kind of get into this place where you're in the hospital and you have this wonderful team of nurses and doctors and therapists and social workers around you helping you with everything, like from eating to bathing to, going to the bathroom if need be, or you have a schedule of drugs and things that are going to happen throughout the day. And then once you're done, they're just like, bye. And you have follow-up appointments, but the day-to-day is like, I don't know what to do with
Yeah.
myself. And the way that I explain this often is like the death of you. And like the person I was before chemo, dead. The person I was during chemo, dead. The person that I was shortly after treatment, dead. And you just have to like rebuild who you are. And so part of that, what I was saying about the identity crisis situation, is that like you just want to feel the way you felt before this all happened. And so what do? You default to the things that you're used to, that you considered to be normal before all of this happened, like drinking with friends, going on dates, hooking up with people, like you do all of these things to kind of try and find like that thing. It's almost kind of like you're future chasing, or like not satisfied in the moment, because you're like, wait, where is this person? Where is this person that I used to feel like? Where is it? Where are they? And you never get to it. And so you have to have a moment where you're like, okay, this isn't working. What can I change?
But also circumstances around you did change as well. So the old person who was dealing with his drive to be living, to be alive, is no longer now. You don't have any death timeline coming to you, or there's no really any more of, am I going to survive this or not? You did survive it. So who you were then is no longer the person that you are today. So it's like chasing a shadow.
No, for sure. And also there's that's a really good way of putting it. It is like chasing a shadow, because you're just never going to catch it. It's always in front of you or behind you
Right.
or whatever. But to that point, I mean, you certainly try. And it's not so much, I feel like I've had this conversation, of a version of this conversation, a lot this week, where you're like, oh, if I just lose 10 more pounds, or if I just make this amount of money, or if I just find this man or this woman or this person to spend my life with, then I'll feel X, or then I will be X. And then when you get it and you're like, oh no, still feel the same. What happened? And it's more about like the inner work of yourself and the mental health component of it, that you have to have this realization where it's like, I don't exist anymore, and I get to create this new person. And you get to keep what you want and not keep what you don't want, and very intentionally and consciously move forward in that way. And I didn't have the language or the resources to kind of articulate that during that period of time. So it was a lot of floundering
Mhm.
and defaulting to what I knew.
I
And it wasn't pretty.
But do you feel this is in human nature, Ed, that everyone, when you do reach a goal or a milestone in your life, you always ask yourself that question with two words: what's next? Or what do I need to go from here? Because yeah, you didn't even take the chance to celebrate your success or your winnings or whatever it is, and you just want to go, what is the next challenge? Is that how you approach life from that point forward? To say, okay, well, now I got that home with the picket fence, or now I got that relationship, or now I got that success. What's next?
I think we as humans in general, this situation aside, do that. And I think it gets in the way of appreciating the moment that you're living in. And, I mean, living in capitalism doesn't really help you live in the moment, does it? But like, but having the sense to take a second even just to be like, okay, like I did it. And when I was told I was cancer free, I did. I had like a really good long hard cry in my apartment, and I called my family and my friends, and I put a little social media post up, and I just kind of was like, okay, we can close that chapter. And then the chapter of trying to rebuild your identity and who you are and some semblance of a life that you recognized became the next chapter.
Okay.
And so because of that, I got really good at living in the moment then, but I was also at the same time riddled with worry and fear that it was going to come back. That like every little cut, every little bruise was like, oh my God, is this like watching it compulsively to see how it healed, to
Yes.
see if it was healing fast enough, because sometimes lymphoma turns into leukemia and then you have a different problem. And it was just like this hyper vigilance and awareness that consumed a lot of my mental space. And, again, I didn't have the language or the resources to kind of do anything about it. And that was really scary because you're, again, fighting for an identity to figure out who you are and how to maneuver forward, but then also being like, oh my God, it's chasing me. So in a sense, you're chasing a shadow and being chased by a shadow.
But then when you decide to write that book, was it after you finished the 10 month of when you were like cancer free, then you decided to be able to share your story? Or what really prompted you to to share that with the world after your experiences?
So I kind of always figured I would have done something with that period of my life, and I didn't know what. And it wasn't until like I think 3 years later, I had met someone who like revealed to me that he had just found out like months prior that he was cancer free. And he articulated to me how he felt about, the people around him were irritating him, like the way that his career and work was going. Like he just couldn't be bothered and didn't want to do it. And he was just so mired in this whole, like, I don't know what to do. And that was the first time that I heard it articulated back to me that I was like, oh my God, that is exactly where I was at. And so we had this very long conversation, and I think right then and there, sitting in my apartment, he and I like had this moment where I was like, I'm writing this book. And he just kind of laughed. I was like, no, I like you don't understand, it's happening. And we still talk every so often now, but that human has single-handedly changed my life for the rest of my life. And shortly thereafter, I had called a couple other people I knew who were around my age to ask them, who also had cancer, to ask them similar questions. And every single one of them was like, oh, yeah, it was like such a beast to kind of like re-regulate and calibrate back into some semblance of an identity or life. And I was like, that's it. That is what I'm writing about. The end. That is what's happening.
So is it an accumulation of different entities or human that actually went through cancer and they're sharing their own story, or this is primarily your autobiography?
In a way, it's autobiographical. It lives on a heightened reality plane, and although like that's the musical theater component of it, although the truth of the story is there and not altered at all, like the story is still what happened. It is kind of contrasted and heightened by the experience of living inside of a musical.
Okay.
So it's solely my story, but it is influenced and kind of validated by the experiences that others have had and have shared with me, that I also used as motivation to write the book.
Oh, amazing. And where can they find this book, Edward? And what is the title again?
The title is Cancer, Musical Theater, and Other Chronic Illnesses. It
Okay.
is available at barnesandnoble.com. It's on Apple Books and walmart.com and everywhere you can buy books on the internet.
There could be a sequel to that book, or do you feel that this is kind of like a one-stop shop of experiencing cancer, and the next book is going to be something completely different?
I have two other books in the works, and they're very unrelated in a sense. So I think I don't want to say it's a one-stop shop because of course everyone's, experiences are unique, but kind of the next step for this is I'm adapting the book for TV, and it's going to be a musical TV show very similar to like Crazy Ex-Girlfriend or Glee or Zoe's Extended Playlist or something like that, or Schmirgadoon or Schmicago if you're watching that. But it's going to be in that same vein of dark humor with musicals and subject matter.
So now, are you still an actor? Are you still back in doing what you did before cancer, or did you change your career in that regard?
I dabble. I kind of go back and forth. I'm in a fourth right now. I'm not really focusing on that. I think the next version of me going back into that will be when this is being filmed.
Okay.
I have written myself a role.
Yeah.
It's not the me role, but it is a role.
Okay.
And it's going to be really poetic and cool to have that kind of come to fruition in the way that kind of like vehicle is being used. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I was just actually talking about this last night with one of my former theater friends, and it's, we've kind of both for the most part left the industry to pursue other things, and maybe one day I'll go back, but it's just, we'll see what happens.
The producer, director, and actor in that musical, or are you going to have just the actor role?
So directing TV is not a thing that I would ever attempt. It's not. And plus when you're the writer and you're in it and you're doing, like, you don't need another hat. And so I'm a big person on like hiring